It is a big moment with some of the biggest names of today and the future in contemporary art on display. As Jeffrey Brown explores, these works at the Whitney Biennial can also inspire controversy. It's part of our ongoing Arts and Culture series, Canvas.
It's called Procession by artist Nicole Eisenman. Large sculptural figures installed on a roof terrace at the Whitney Museum in New York. Made of plaster, metal, fiberglass, a bit of everything. It's the largest and brashest piece in the 2019 version of the Whitney Biennial. Widely considered the country's premier survey of contemporary American art. Works by 75 artists in a wide variety of media and formats. On the wall in photographs by John Edmonds and Curran Hadelberg. On the floor and in the air in a performance piece by Brendan Fernandez. Curators Rujeko Hockley and Jane Panetta want us to see that American art today comes in many forms and from all over.
That's something we really wanted to foreground in the exhibition, is that actually there's a great diversity of work being made all across this country in terms of medium, in terms of ideas, in terms of approach, in terms of issues that are of relevance. We really found just a true multiplicity of things rather than any one thing.
You know, while dealing with big socio-political questions that are on the table in a major way right now in this country, the work didn't feel kind of angry or polemical, but that it felt hopeful and often productive.
One thing they found, even in this high-tech age, artists still like to make things by hand. 31-year-old Pat Phillips from a small town in Louisiana painted a giant mural addressing issues of race and incarceration that comes with its own wood fence and bench. There are finely crafted sculptures by Diane Simpson and Daniel Lind Ramos, whose assemblage of tools, branches, natural and salvage materials becomes a kind of shrine to the suffering from the 2017 hurricane in his native Puerto Rico.
There's a sculptural turn in them.
And there's also the strange, translucent, torso-shaped hanging forms handmade by Reagan Moss, who wants us to walk around and peer inside them.
Sculptures, to me, one of its categorical imperatives is that it can teach us about space like nothing else.
Moss is also a lawyer, no doubt unusual for a biennial artist, but she likes the way her two disciplines make her think differently.
When you're a lawyer, you're given a set of facts. They are not in your control, and a good lawyer's job is to analyze an issue spot, address them, and solve them. Art could almost be an opposite funnel, where there are no facts. I make the facts, and then I solve problems that don't exist. I set my own questions.
The Whitney Biennial is known for addressing current political issues, but this year the museum itself has become the focal point in a controversy similar to that facing other cultural institutions.
Sackler's lies!
The Metropolitan Museum of Art and other museums have been targeted in the last year for accepting so-called toxic philanthropy from the Sackler family, linked to the opioid crisis. At issue here, the vice chairman of the Whitney Board of Trustees, Warren Kanders, a leading funder and head of a company called Safariland, which makes military and law enforcement equipment. After reports that its tear gas canisters were used on asylum seekers at the U.S.-Mexico border and elsewhere, activists who've held regular protests at the museum demanded Kanders leave the board. No action has been taken to date. Speaking to the press at the biennial opening, Whitney director Adam Weinberg said this.
This is a challenging time for many of this country's cultural and educational institutions. These complicated questions are also being debated publicly, with a range of viewpoints being expressed on all sides. We take these questions very seriously.
We created a digital model.
One direct response at the biennial came from the group Forensic Architecture, which produced a 10-minute video called Triple Chaser, named for a type of tear gas grenade, that tracks and vividly illustrates its use at hotspots around the world. A group of museum employees signed a letter calling for Kanders to resign, among them biennial co-curator Hockley.
This is certainly a different sort of controversy, and one that we didn't anticipate at any time. You know, I think that we are all making our own personal choices about how to approach and how to handle these different situations.
More than 2/3 of the participating artists also signed on to a call for Cantor's resignation, including Nicholas Galanin, an Alaskan of Tlingit and Unangat descent.
This is a reference to that noise in conversation towards cultural communities, which is our histories, our stories, our voices.
But his work in the exhibition, including a large tapestry called White Noise American Prayer Rug, raised different questions for art museums and the larger society about what he terms agency for indigenous people, including artists.
If we look at numbers and statistics, who's represented in these spaces often, it's been a slow overturn. So in the world of art history, that's taught, the idea of craft versus fine art, those are all real conversations, and those are frameworks that get placed onto us.
Do you see that changing, especially in institutions
Slowly,
like this?
it's not fast enough.
This biennial is unusually diverse. More than half its artists are women. Additionally, more than half are artists of color. It also skews young. 3/4 are under 40, including Eddie Arroyo of Miami, whose suite of paintings of a small restaurant in his Little Haiti neighborhood is an artistic approach to documenting and fighting gentrification. And you are capturing the images of certain buildings.
Yeah, certain buildings I feel are important or notable. Also, I anticipated instances where there was going to be decisions being made on what structures or businesses are allowed to exist or perceived as a failure.
Why a business lasts or doesn't last, that could be for developers, that could be for lawyers, that could be for journalists.
It could be for people in the neighborhood as well.
Yeah, but why is it for a painter? Why is it for an artist?
Because I live there.
As simple as that. In a deeply divided America, the artists chosen by curators Panetta and Hockley exhibit a quieter tone than in the past. You have to listen for it, as in Kota Izawa's animation of football players kneeling during the national anthem. And look for it, as in Jeffrey Gibson's huge banners.
A lot of those kind of big socio-political issues that we're grappling with in this country right now are there in the work. I just think in a lot of cases, there's a combination of kind of poetry and interest on the part of the artist in infusing that content with, you know, aesthetic decisions around paint color, material.
For us, I think we hope when people come to see the exhibition that they find it engaging, that they find it kind of an interesting and illuminating experience to move through the galleries, but also that perhaps it helps them to reframe some of their thinking around some of the kind of most difficult issues of our time.
The biennial exhibition is up through September 22nd. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jeffrey Brown at the Whitney Museum in New York.
And on the NewsHour online right now, everyone wants to save the bees as their populations decline every year. But a new study suggests we may be saving them to death. Researchers found that viruses may be spilling over from commercial honeybee colonies into wild bee populations. You can learn more on our website, pbs.org/newshour.